A topic in the spotlight is, of course, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's first press conference since winning the election. He battled reporters on Russian hacking, his business interests or potential conflicts of interest, and shunned some media which he blamed for disseminating fake news. Now, to get more insights on what he said and what happened, we have in Washington, D.C., Joel Martin Rubin, president of the Washington Strategy Group, a foreign policy advisory forum. Joe previously worked in the State Department under the Obama administration and was a Democratic congressional candidate in 2016. Joe, thank you very much for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm sure you watched the press conference. I hope you did. And
yes.
Trump dominated the press conference in a very, how do you say, dominating style. Let's say he talked for the majority of the conference, 60%. What do you think of his style? Is it fiery, or as some press has described, as freewheeling?
It certainly was both of those, and it was his first press conference in 6 months, which has already generated a lot of questions as to why he's not willing to engage directly with reporters. And then we saw what happened when he engaged with reporters. He shouted them down, and there are a few key takeaways from this. The first is that it's clear that President-elect Trump wants to have a combative relationship with the media. It's also clear that he is still actively taking on the intelligence community and criticizing them in public time and again, and so taking on these institutions. It's also clear that he is still speaking directly to his base, not yet to the broader American public, those who didn't vote for him. He's focusing on his core supporters and getting them riled up. That seems to be the way he wants to govern in the beginning of his administration.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we go further, I would like to clarify that I'm not supporting Republican or Democrat. I'm supporting anybody who has a constructive attitude towards relations with China as a future president of the United States. But indeed, I think we need to take a more objective approach, or at least try to do that. I mean, he did give some information about his future policy, for instance, when it comes to the war with Mexico, or his appointment with the Supreme Court, or the or bringing jobs back to the United States. Do you think he gave some explanation as to what he intends to do in those fronts, objectively?
Absolutely, and he did, but he didn't do it in a way that was in sync with the people who are now testifying on Capitol Hill in the Senate in their confirmation hearings. His future Secretary of State, for instance, yesterday. It was very interesting. Yesterday, Rex Tillerson was questioned heavily by the Senate Foreign Relations Committee in hopes of becoming the next Secretary of State. Mm-hmm. And he spoke about, for instance, the One China policy and said that has not changed. But it seems to be out of sync a bit with President-elect Trump. Mm-hmm. So yes, there were many pronouncements yesterday, but I'm not sure yet if his team and he are fully in sync. And so it's going to be a challenge to govern from that position.
What does this say about the makeup of his cabinet and the kind of coordination that's necessary to govern the most powerful country in the world?
This is a really essential thing for all of us who are watching this transition to understand, which is that he has organized a cabinet that he's very proud of, and he should be. These are very distinguished individuals, many of them very successful in their own fields. Yet at the same time, many of them do not really know him. They have not been close to him. Some have. Jeff Sessions, for Attorney General, was supporting him during the campaign. But others, General James Mattis for Defense, will testify today, Rex Tillerson yesterday. These are new faces to Donald Trump. So the White House is in many ways going to be the center of activity, and it's going to have to organize all of these individuals rather quickly to ensure that it has one unified message. Yesterday, Rex Tillerson said things that were distinct from what Donald Trump has said, for instance, about Russia. So we'll have to see how they go forward.
Yeah, but in attacking China on its South China Sea policy, they were in sync, I'm afraid. But we're not going to go into that. Let's focus on one of the issues that everybody is watching, and I think some of the, or most of the press in the United States is obsessed with, is the Russian hacking incident. I'm sorry, I'm going to say here that I think he has a point that although it is wrong for anybody to hack into the system, the email system of any party, but what really came out is not good? I mean, shouldn't people pay a little bit of attention to what was said in those emails? And some of these insider information that came out is really quite shocking.
Well, the damage from an American national security perspective of having a hacking is that it is an undermining effort, undermining of American democratic institutions. One, when looking at what's said in emails, should not focus on solely that. And that is what came up in the campaign, and it was used effectively against Hillary Clinton. But it was one-sided, and it's clear that there was an influence operation underway by the hackers to shift public perceptions of the campaign, and that's what the intelligence community was getting at. And I do think it's dangerous, I have to say, to blame the victim solely of the hack. The analogy I'd like to use is if one leaves the front door to their house unlocked at night and a criminal, a thief comes in and robs the house, is it the homeowner who's to blame, or is it the thief? It's the thief. They made a mistake, the homeowner, but the thief is the criminal. And certainly some of those emails, they were very embarrassing. But this can go both ways. And you see many Republicans on Capitol Hill also saying this is dangerous, not just because it harms our national security, but also us as Republicans. They can come after us next time. So to not take a strong stand on this now, it may be expedient, but it also can open up the Pandora's box to future hacks against anyone, and that's what we should all be concerned about.
Sure, we need to blame on the thieves, but also take care that our doors are securely locked and there is nothing embarrassing that are coming out. By the way, China is also against hacking, okay? Repeatedly, the president-elect says China hacking. China is also against hacking, and China is working with the United States to deal with these kind of illegal cyber activities. But let's take a listen.
Cybersecurity is essential. Cybersecurity is essential for every single country and all businesses around the world. It's not a joke. And I think the danger in this discussion that we're seeing in Washington is that it's become a sort of he said, she said, rather than we have a real issue here that we need to resolve. And we have to get to that point where it's seen like every side does take it seriously. And it's really confusing, you know, when we're watching all the TV reports on the US media, you just don't know what is happening. Let's take a look at the kind of spat that was going on during Donald Trump's press conference when he accused the CNN journalist or accused CNN of being the producer of fake news.
Don't be.
Can you give us a question?
I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
Indeed, that is a very harsh exchange of words, and that is dominating the Chinese social media throughout the day since the press conference came out. What is your understanding of this kind of fight that's happening between CNN, which is considered to be a representative of the establishment press outlet, with the president-elect?
CNN had recently hired Corey Lewandowski, Trump's former campaign manager, a very strong pro-Trump advocate, to be a commentator. So they are not an anti-Trump organization. They're pretty centrist and pretty mainstream. This is unprecedented. One never sees a president or a president-elect directly attacking the media for their reporting in such a way. And this is consistent with how Donald Trump has engaged the media. Yesterday, he did say some positive things about the media for good coverage and negative things for bad coverage. That's not going to work in the American system. People are very skeptical of leaders who try to bully the media. There will be many critics, but the media has the ability to continually engage, continually ask questions. And it also is these ethics questions that have come up. One cannot skirt ethics rules. And when I ran for Congress, I had to submit ethics papers. Everyone does. The lead ethics officer for the United States yesterday called President-elect Trump's moves to separate from the business meaningless. This won't go away. These are systems that have been around for decades and are stand the test of time. He's going to have to deal with them in a different way. Questions will not just disappear because he doesn't like them.
Yeah, well, he did take questions from the majority of the media that was present, but that that 5-second of exchange was indeed remarkable. But anyway, let's come to what you mentioned just now, the conflict of interest that is surrounding his huge organization. He says is a huge organization at this moment. Indeed, that was the main message he wanted to convey, although nobody seemed to be paying attention to that. What do you think of the way that he's going to deal with his asset? Instead of giving it to a blind trust, he's giving it to his hands of his two sons?
The ethics experts from both parties, George W. Bush's ethics advisor, Bill Clinton's ethics advisor, the independent ethics leaders in this country all say that the steps he's taken do not pass the test. He will still be potentially susceptible to influence from outside actors because of financial interest in the Trump organization. And that's the problem. It's not whether or not he's managing the organization. It's whether or not he stands to gain financially from the organization's business activities. And he will, because it's still in the family, still with his sons. So and he used an example yesterday to prove the point, which was fascinating, where he said, I believe it was a gentleman from Abu Dhabi offered him $2 billion for a business deal over the weekend that he rejected. Well, that's significant. If foreign governments, domestic businesses, you name it, are engaging with the Trump organization and offering him really good business deals, that will supply money to the president himself and potentially unduly influence him. And that is what no president of the United States has ever had to deal with from an ethics perspective. And I do think this is still an open question here in Washington.
Thank you very much, Joel Rubin, for joining us from Washington, D.C. That was Joel Rubin, the president of the Washington Strategy Group. Indeed, in the future, if anybody wants to make a business with his sons, then of course they will probably have an influence with their father, which is the President of the United States. How are you going to steer clear to those interests? Indeed, is an open question and is worth watching. You're watching The Point here on CGTN. I'm LIU Xin. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back after that.